Welcome to Fact or Freestyle.
People love Dave Nourie, and they always answer the phone when he calls. When we get him on Zoom, we ask him to confirm rumors.
Let's see how far down the rabbit hole we go.
Look down on my leg in the shower, and there's this skin bump, just like an oval, like there was a golf ball underneath it. And I push into it, and I can put my finger all the way down through the muscle in my leg. For 20, 30 years, every time I see that bubble on my leg, I think of Chris Young, because that was the day that we rode together, and I had a hole in my leg muscle permanently now. So there you go.
Well, and
that
also,
was that was a lasting impression.
but Joe, wasn't it also that you felt like it was a kind of a blessing in disguise, because really Chris needed to find the Plywood Hoods, and Chris needed to find that caliber of rider. I'm just saying, at the time, Joe, you weren't exactly what Chris needed to get him to the next level. I'm not trying to throw you on the bus. I'm just saying, like, that.
Based on my scores in that session, in those days with that injury, absolutely. There's no question.
And the fact that you had the injury only put you further back, because Chris was like, who is this guy? Like, I didn't even get to see him ride.
Yeah, it was just getting there. I met a bunch of guys at Clay's Park contest, and I was moving up here to Cleveland, and I just so happened to run into Kevin Cunningham, Scott Powell, Dave Schaefer, Joe, like the whole clique. And when I moved, I was 15 minutes from North Olmsted. I was actually Middleburg Heights. So I just clicked with everybody. And then I met Joe, and the rest was kind of history. It's a great riding bunch of guys that were really super stoked, ×7 on each other. And, shout out to Rodney. So, yeah.
Yeah, man.
Keeping it slammed. I love it.
Awesome. So Chris, what was it? Speaking of Plywood Hoods, can you tell us what it was like to get on? Like, we've heard about the audition and the special, like,
and specifically, Joe, just to make sure, specifically address Joe, because I think this is really Joe's. I'm just saying, yes.
It feels so good to be nominated.
Tell Joe, what is it like?
That situation's still, being ironed out. There's, we're working on that. There's a lot of talk, how that's going to go about, so, 2022, Joe's been showing that, as you get older in life, you still have dreams, and you still got to dream big. And that's what I'm loving to see from Joe. It's inspiring me. So, and then I look at James, that pack that James has got, James White.
Hell yeah.
That's super cool.
Super awesome. Like, James, just that edit, that Plywood Hoods edit he did was just phenomenal. So, and then, to see people just get stoking that fire, like it's just stoking everybody around. So that's kind of what I love to see.
Chris, can you talk a little bit about, like, so now you are on the other side of that velvet. You have been. When were you on the team officially? Like, when was your first thing? And then how is the difference between, hey, nice trophy in the background there. I see.
Oh yeah, thanks.
Yeah, nice.
Yeah, there's an old Rampage trophy too. Let me see if I can get that in there. From Moliterno. Yep, back in '94. Got to ride against a bunch of people. So it was Dave Nourie and all those guys back then. It was awesome.
Nice.
So, So the story of how I became a Plywood Hoods.
Yeah, sure. I don't know. Joe, do you want to hear that?
I sure do.
This is, it's wild because I haven't told a lot of people, and just thinking about how the whole thing happened it was definitely fate. Just traveling, riding Flatland, and just moving around and meeting people and seeing different riders, and then and then the Hoods come out with the Dorkins and just changed everything. And it was like 88, Woodward Meet the Street. Me and a bunch of guys got together, Pat Miller, and we drove down to Woodward and stayed at out at Penn State area, State College, and just super hyped for the comp, hoping to run into Kevin and Eden and Brett and everybody, and man, just crazy, because I think the Hitchhiker just came out, and it was crazy because it was like as soon as Kevin showed up, people were getting cameras out and just filming him. The guy never got no peace. It's like it was just it was crazy. And so I finally run into Kevin and Brett actually at the comp, and we were trying to ride, and so I was wanting to go up and just ride with them, just, hey, what's up, and ride, and people literally run up and do this and do that, do a hitchhiker, and Kevin would be like, oh, just dip, it was just crazy. So there was like 2 or 3 occasions that happened that day, and so I never really got to hang out and talk, ride. It just, so it was a bummer, and we went back to the hotel later on, got some food, and we're like, yeah, let's go find somewhere to ride, and we're this hotel, State College area, and we just randomly like go to these buildings, these parking lot, and there's just a bunch of stuff in the way, like cars and stuff. So we're like, well, let's check the back. So we ride behind the building, and who's there? All the Hoods, just randomly under the spotlight at night, just sessioning. And I was like, no way. So I was like, I looked at my buddies. I'm like, let's go and just ride. And I went up to Kevin and Mark, and I was just talking to Mark about the story, and we were just laughing about it. But he, I was like, hey, I told him my name or whatever, and I was like, was it cool if we ride with you? And Kevin, and we're like, yeah. And then we just sessioned, just had a great time, and then Kevin was like, hey, give me your address, so I gave him my address, and went back to the hotel room, got up the next day, went to the comp, just a blast, incredible time. Go home. A week later, I get a letter from Kevin Jones. I'm like, what the?
Wow,
I open it up, and Kevin's just like, man, it was great to meet you. You should come out to York, and ride with us. And so that summer, like summer 89, I went out and stayed for the week and had a blast. And he's like, yeah, you should try to move out here and be in the video. And I'm like, what? So, I go home, I graduate 90, pack my car up, and move to York.
Nice.
Don't even know where I was going to live, nothing. I just get there. And
it's like an acceptance letter.
One of the young bakes up there, hanging out. She's like, oh yeah, we got extra rooms, let me talk to my mom and see if you can stay. And that drove Chase crazy, because he was renting from Eaton at the time, and this lady's like, yeah, you could just move in for free. So I ended up got a free place to stay, and man, it was incredible. The rest was history.
So it's like people
this
that apply for
wild turn of events just to randomly go behind this building. And like I say, it was fate. So when you
but
keep
there's some magic.
seeking, and the dreams come true. Amazing things happen.
That's some magic. When I used to ride outside and I would like go looking for spots, there's like this instinct that you have. Like you can tell
Yes.
from the front of the building if the back of the building is going to be dialed in. Like you can get a sense of it. I would love doing that. Yeah, man.
I think it's amazing that you actually got, it's like people that apply for college, they apply for all these different colleges and then they get the letter. And Kevin sent Chris Young the acceptance letter. So Joe, have you received any letters or it might be an email at this point, but I'm just wondering.
Not yet. Not to my knowledge.
Chris is kind of building up your hopes a little bit. I just want to make sure you keep it reality.
He quite is.
He might be messing with you. I don't know how, but it's been 4 years.
Doesn't matter. Let me tell you why it doesn't matter.
Okay, I'm just saying.
Do you know the feeling I have right now?
No, I don't, but tell me.
Imagine my feeling.
There's hope. There's hope. You got a little bit of hope.
There is a long, elaborate ceremony about to happen. Imagine that feeling. Okay?
Okay.
Live with that.
Live with it.
Anything you want about what's going to happen in the future. I can change the future. I am feeling it right now.
Oh, I got it.
Yeah.
So you're doing the whole present time, living in what you exactly want.
No, I'm not telling you something that I read out of a motivational manual. I'm telling you literally how I feel. I'm not doing a thing. I'm telling you literally how I feel.
You're not doing
I'm being emotionally honest, and it is awesome.
All right. Sounds good.
That is awesome. It's an awesome feeling. So you just keep driving and pushing for it.
Hey Joe, what was it like when you heard all these people? Maybe you can kind of even rattle off, because there was a testimonial that Jim and I put together.
Oh,
I'm
deeply grateful that you guys did that. It means so much to me. I showed it to Angie. It was spectacular. It was absolutely spectacular.
Well, tell just because we haven't published it, so tell maybe the viewers a little bit about what was said and who said it, and do you remember some of the highlights?
So we certainly did. We did publish it. We didn't. I understand that there's additional footage on there. It was the Academy, relevant members of the Academy voiced their nomination, the rationale for their nomination.
Hey, it's okay to name drop. I mean, Brett's allowed you. It's okay. You can name drop.
This is what's going to hold me back.
No, Brett will probably appreciate it.
So Chris did. Mark, I don't know that Mark said it. Mark provided strategies.
Good strategies, right?
Good strategies, yes. Matt Wilhelm did. Ed Jody did. Terry Adams did. Terry had some very nice things. Bill Nitschke started and then jumped immediately to saying it would never happen so that Bill could get a clip in the edit, which I completely appreciate.
Yeah, he's always strategy and he's always thinking ahead. Yeah.
Todd Carter as well. Todd Carter enumerated in great detail, in fact.
Those are heavy hitters.
In fact, there could have been more, but because we were at a contest setting, the time and scheduling just didn't work out to get more. But there could have been more, Joe.
Yeah, we were relentless. I was relentless in getting people on board, because I was like, hey, so what? They got another run, but let's get them in between the run.
That was awesome.
Yeah, we did what we could to get everybody that we could find. So cool. All right.
Those actors. Leonardo DiCaprio should have felt, if he felt this good, because it took him a while to win an Oscar. But man, good for so many years. I'll take that.
So
So
let's
Chris,
see.
go ahead.
Go ahead, Jim. What do you got?
Hey, Chris, I was wondering, so when you got into the Plywood Hoods, is there like an induction ceremony? Are you
Right.
presented with something? Was there any kind of like formality? You know, did you get like a ring? Yeah, what was that like?
Man, it's a feeling that it's really hard to put into words. Joe was, I think, trying to kind of pinpoint that, but that feeling of just being in that crew of human beings, like just the radness and awesomeness of being around those guys and feeding off them and just, it's beyond words. Like, you know, you ride, you see the stuff in the videos that they're doing, and then all of a sudden you're there and you're riding with them, and then you're just feeling a part of that. Like, it's.
Hey, Ray, how about you, Ray? Could you, like, if this were to happen, I'm not really betting on it, but I'm just saying, if it were to happen, what would be the Joe Sickman, you know, inductee ceremony? What would that look like, Ray? Because we could maybe, you know, put this out there into the universe as far as our ideas. So,
well, I would say it's the induction ceremony would have to take us back to like everything we did when we were, what we did in like 1987 or something.
Yeah.
okay.
So,
Yeah.
I mean, I already kind of told you guys, I think before, like, you know, you gotta, I mean, Eaton's mom still owns the house, still lives in the same house that Mark grew up in.
Yes,
So
she does.
That front room where he has the lawnmower, that's guaranteed. And you can do it all in one day. You got to go to Rutter's and you got to ride for at least 4 hours, just straight flatland. Then, I guess you have to just stay at Eaton's house. Maybe go to Mount Rose, do a couple, you know, whiplashes or something. It doesn't take a lot. That's what I would think it would be.
Just take them down memory lane, like,
yeah, and then
be a part of that. Just
anything
to get the
crazy, unless you know unless the higher ups in the Plywood Hoods wanted to. See, Chris, what I'm getting at is, I think I am a self-proclaimed Plywood Hood only because I did a show at Rockville for the Plywood Hoods. Like, they said,
yeah,
you want to come out and do a run? Like, and me and Eaton did a doubles routine. The way I look at it is, if you know anything about baseball, like, you could be in the minor leagues and then all of a sudden get called up to the Yankees, play in one game, and then go back down and never play another game again. And for the rest of your life, you're known as a New York Yankee.
Yeah.
So I don't care what anybody says. I am a 100% legitimate Plywood Hood.
Oh,
whether anyone likes it or
doubt,
not.
you're a staple. You're a staple.
I mean, if I'm not a Plywood Hood, I don't know who is. You know, you're
one of the guys. Like, when I hear Plywood Hood, I think Ray.
Xavier Mendez always introduces me to people as like, oh, that's right, Plywood Hood, and like Warren and I just like laugh because in the real book of Plywood Hoods, I'm not a Plywood Hood at all, but in my world, I'm a freaking Plywood Hood. So, you know,
well, it's, you know, that's I kind of, you're just part of that.
Yeah,
you know what I mean? Like, I mean, you're either in or out. So, like, I just think it was like that. Rather, it was an intense amount of riding, or the friendship, or just that whole connection.
Yeah,
you know, like the spirit of the Plywood Hoods is just, I think it's really like, I don't know, blowing back up. You know, there's been a lot of talk, a lot of, you know, like, yeah, the stoke of the fire times 7.
Joe, here's something you might think is funny. I didn't ever tell you the first time I ever met any of the Plywood Hoods, like where it was, when it was, and what it was. Like, a friend of mine somehow was talking to some kid named Mike Jones in New York. You guys probably don't even know who that is. It's a guy from like the mid 80s who worked at West BMX, wherever that is. I think it's New York. Somehow he knew Mike Daly. A friend of mine, Mario, who lived down the street from me, was talking to this guy, and he's like, hey, there's these guys in York, the guy Mike Daly, Plywood Hoods, and they want to meet you guys, meaning Gary Pollock. And I think that's sort of how it went. And so my friend Mario calls me up one Friday night, and he goes, yo, those guys from York are here. And I'm like, what guys from York? He goes, remember I was telling you that guy, blah, 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 they're coming down. And I'm like, wait, who's at your house? And he goes, and this is exactly what he said. He goes, these 3 Amish dudes from somewhere in Lancaster are here, and they're totally weird. And he goes, and I'm like, well, wait a minute. I'm like, all right. So I roll up now. Like at that point, I had been to like a few contests. Like I've seen like the pro riders, you know what I mean? Like I've seen like the Dennis McCoys and all these dudes, and I've seen like the scene basically. And I show up at his house, and they're outside riding, and their bikes were kind of weird. And like, I mean, if you see 1986 Dale Mitchell, he didn't need a Halloween mask if he went out, you know what I mean? Like he's a weird looking dude. So Dale, Mike Daly, and Kevin, like Kevin and Dale Mitchell didn't speak, and Mike Daly did all the talking, and they had like their own little like language. You know, these guys were only like 100 miles from me, right? And dude, they might as well have been from the moon, just the way they were talking. And I was like, I thought Kevin was really old. Like I was like, because we were like in 11th grade, and Kevin was already like out of high school, and we're just like, I'm like, what is this dude doing? Like, why is this guy here? Should he have a job somewhere? Like, it was just weird. And so then my friend Mario, like after I get done the shock of like, you know, trying to evaluate these weirdos, he goes, dude, you got to see these guys. He goes, you got to see their tricks. And I'm like, why? What do they do? Are they like really like goofy, like lame? And he goes, no, he goes, the one guy's really good. And Kevin did a bar ride down this kid's street. And he jumped down off the bar ride and came back. And I'm like looking at his bike, and he goes, what are you looking at? And I was going, did you do that without any levers? And he was like, what are you talking about? Because Martin used to have a lever on his thing. And Kevin, being out in the woods in York, he never knew that Martin did this bar ride with the lever. So he was just doing them like regular. And but he did it like super long. Like he did it like he'd been doing it for like 10 years. And then he started doing some like boomerang variations and a couple other tricks. And the first thing I said was, holy shit, this dude's better than Gary, or close to Gary, you know what I mean? But we still thought he was like an old man. Like Kevin just was like a grown up, you know, just like he was like a grown up, because we were just like little kids. And he was only like, Kevin's what, maybe 2 years older than me at the most, but he was like an old guy. And then so we called Gary. We're like, yo, meet us at the mall. We're going over there with these Amish kids. We really called them like the Amish kids. I mean, they all had like Dale and Kevin had like the Chili Bowl haircut, and that's like the Amish place. And they just weren't dressed like the way like freestylers dress. Like
the
just,
80s
like,
with the bright colors and all that.
Yeah,
right?
they just had like a pair of like some kind of off-brand shorts with like a collared t-shirt. You know, these guys are just weird. So then we just rode with them for like they were there for like a day and a half. Like they stayed over the dude's house, and like the next day we went to Gary's and rode, and it was weird because I was like, wow, I'm like, Kevin can do anything. Like Kevin can ride, he can ride vert, he can jump, I was amazed at how good Kevin was, but still I was just like, hey, this is pretty cool, but we'll never see this dude again because he's like an old guy. You know what I mean? He's like some old dude. Because like my world of of freestyle was this big. It was real tiny. You know, it's like, I mean, like, you know, like with Joe Johnson, I thought Joe was deaf because of the Boston accent. I didn't know anything about the world. So, and then it seemed like then the guys would come down like almost, it seemed like every week, like maybe that summer or that winter, whatever it was, they came down like 4 times. And then like the next time they came with Eaton. And if you see a 1986 Mark Eaton, like that's like Hollywood couldn't create that dude. Like he just had like the goofy haircut.
The hair, yeah.
He might have weighed 70 pounds. Like he was so skinny, like so skinny. And he could do a ton of tricks. And so like, you know, within a couple of months, these guys had come down to King of Prussia. And it's funny because I asked Eaton just recently, I was like, why were you guys coming down every week? Like, what was the deal? And he goes, well, you guys had a scene in King of Prussia. I'm like, what do you mean? He goes, well, you had like people that rode there. And then when I thought about it, there were like almost 20 kids in King of Prussia that rode Flatland. That was like, doing like riding Flatland. And I'd never even realized that. And so then we started going up to York, and then we're like, oh, now we get it. Now I get it. You know, like now I can see where this is all coming from. And I mean, I feel really lucky that in my life of like growing up as a kid in the BMX world, that I got to see the guys from York in the, like what I would consider the beginning, and I watched them go from like, you know, the weird Amish kids to like, you know, Kevin Jones and Rick Moliterno and at Texas, and Kevin doing that kick-ass run, doing the locomotive or whatever the hell it was, or it was awesome, you know, just being there and seeing that. So that was a lot of fun. I feel pretty lucky.
And then all years later, York no scene turned into like the Mecca.
Oh my God. It's like what Greenville was back in the 90s, 2000s and stuff. It was we'd go to York, and Eaton would just give me the rundown. He's like, well, that dude moved here, that dude moved here, and like,
yeah.
And then he about all the girls, and he's like, that girl and that girl, and he's with that girl.
Story about Kevin some years later. I don't know how much longer later, but me and Kevin were at the Whiplash Hill, just doing whiplashes down the hill, and we were taking a break, and Kevin like points over this little building, and it was a little community college, and he's like, yeah, I was going to that community college right there. He goes, I stopped riding, and I believe that was a time when they just felt like we did everything, and then so they stopped riding, and then Kevin was like in school, and some time went by, and then he was like, wait a minute, like there's like so much more to do. And he was telling me the story, and I was just like, and then basically after that, it's when Death Truck was invented, and Hitchhiker, and just all this groundbreaking tricks were done. And it was just such a rad story just to be like, yeah, I was in that, you know, I stopped riding, and I was in that little school right there, and then just a flood of, you know, and you went back, and Mark talked about it in Dorkin. He's like, yeah, we need to ride, and like there's a whole bunch more, and Mark's like, wait, we've done everything. And then it was mind-blowing to just hear how that whole thing unfolded with him. So yeah.
Hey everybody, so here's the time. This is when we're going to come in and do the Flatland Fuel $20 gift certificate giveaway. There's going to be a code that flashes on the screen. Go, write this down, and go immediately to Flatland Fuel. Buy something, enter this code. It will be a total pain in the ass. It's like 20 characters long. Go ahead and get your money and buy some bike parts from Flatland Fuel because they're sponsoring the show now.
Hey, Joe, remember the story that we talked about? I can't remember who the guests were, but where when the Plywood Hoods, and specifically Kevin Jones, and maybe even this Texas run that Ray was talking about, when it first came out, and Kevin would get second place. Like he wasn't always that first place, rider that would always come home with the trophy. And we were trying to, I guess it was Mark. It must have been Mark that was on the call. But do you remember what that phenomenon was that we were saying?
Yeah, and in fact, I wrote. Mike Daly solicited a story from me for his Moon Babes. It didn't make the cut for the first two, but that was
kind of been your story, though. You just don't make the cut, Joe. Maybe we're just the Joe don't make the cut.
Joe never makes the cut, man.
Joe never.
I will fight to qualify. Like you have no idea. You don't want me behind you in qualifying because I will fight. I will never.
I sent you a message last night. 2022 is going to be your year, Joe. I feel it.
Okay, so continue. So what were you saying? Because I just remember the Plywood Hoods. They made a big splash.
So the quote we opened with, or the story we opened with, was that when the conquistadors arrived in the New World, only the shaman could see the boats.
Oh, right.
Because none of the populace had ever seen a boat, and they didn't have the brain circuitry. But the shaman trained themselves to be able to see things that other people don't see. That is why Kevin kept getting second behind Rick Moliterno, is because the judges, which was the high priesthood of the parents that were controlling people's ranking in the society.
Yeah,
I can break that down for you in real words instead of saying shaman and all that, whatever.
Yeah, please, Ray, come on, give us some other terminology.
Shaman and Amish. This is what we're doing
those
today.
I don't know if Kevin ever beat him. Did Kevin ever beat him?
I don't know, but it was.
But here's the reason why. The reason why, and Mark said this with you guys a while back, where the guys that were judging this weren't riders. They were just some dude from Texas that works at his wife's flower shop, and then on weekends, he's an AFA affiliate guy. So when you see Kevin Jones go out and do his run, Kevin does a kick-ass run, but he's got, a red tough wheel, a pink tough wheel, green paint on his bike. He's wearing leathers, mismatched leathers, and his shirt's not tucked in, right? And then you get Rick Moliterno, who goes out there, factory rider, kick-ass bike, great uniform.